Om Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Samastajana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram. So Hari Om, salutations to all. The 16th, the 18th chapter, 66th verse is one of the most important verses. And if a person has to choose one verse from the whole Gita, which would be the essence of the whole Gita, then that verse would be 18th chapter, 66th verse. So let us chant this verse. I'm just going to share on your screen. So this is the verse. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhyah mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. So why is this the essence of the whole Gita? Because Gita is called as a Ashoka Upanishad, which helps us to get out of grief, sorrow, misery, and helps us to realize Param Anand. And in Vedanta, we know that is what we all seek, to experience permanent happiness and to be free from sorrow, fear, insecurities once and for all. So how does one experience that? So Bhagavan gives here the method. When he says, Aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami, I will liberate you from all papa. Papa here means agitations, the disturbances of the mind. So for that, and then he says, Ma shuchaha, don't grieve. So Ma shuchaha becomes the central message of the Gita, because Bhagavan starts with that in the second chapter. In the 11th verse, he starts with that. Ashocyanan vashochastvam prajnavadancha bhashase. You are grieving for those who don't deserve to be grieved. And he ends with this, Ma shuchaha, do not grieve. That's why it is called Ashoka Upanishad. So if I am a student of the Gita, what should go out of my life? Grief should go out of my life. If I am studying Gita regularly, I should not have any cause of grief. There may be sometimes grief which comes in our life. We may feel that momentarily, but we should get over that. Because what happens otherwise is the mind remains stuck in that, and grief is always connected to something with the past. So we always live in regret. We let go of the opportunity in the present moment. So those difficulties, they come about when we learn to just live in grief. And there are people who spend days together, months together, years together in grief. One of the biggest challenges we face today is what? Is depression. One of the reasons for depression is the inability to let go. Some, maybe unfortunate things have happened, maybe disappointing things have happened. And everybody gets affected, there is no doubt about it, and there's nothing wrong about it. One feels sad if some near and dear one gets harmed, or some loss happens in the business, or somebody has passed away. Physically one gets some disease, sickness. There are many causes for grief. But when Bhagavan says Ma Shuchaha, he means that, it doesn't mean that momentary, that immediate impact of that event should not be there, and you should never feel sad at all. One can feel, one does feel. But one does not allow that to overwhelm oneself. One does not allow oneself to get carried away by it and just live in that sense of victimization or self-pity. So how to get out of that? The ability to let go is the key in living a happy life. So when we say, Purna Kumbha mantra says, Tyage naike amritatva manashuhu. When one does tyaga, then one attains immortality. And the 12th chapter, some of you must have read, Tyagat Shanti Anantaram. As soon as one does tyaga, Shanti is immediate. So when we do tyaga of negative tendencies, when we do tyaga of our own ego, our own prejudices, our own attachments, and ultimately ignorance, we attain peace instantly. When we drop our insistence, we attain peace, because most of the sorrow is because of this. My favorite formula, there are many formulas I have. Out of that, my favorite formula is, what is the formula for sorrow? Insistence plus resistance is equal to sorrow. Whenever I insist that this has to be like this only, then there is sorrow. I cannot insist. I can expect, but I cannot insist. If I say that, no, no, my son has to do what I am saying and I insist on that, sorrow will be there. I can expect my son to listen to me, but if the son doesn't, I have to accept it. Okay, he has his own intelligence. He will do what he wants to do. That is his freedom. And consequence, he has to deal with it. I cannot insist. The moment I insist that this should be like this, sorrow will start. And when we resist, so when we say, no, this cannot happen, this should not be like this, I don't accept this, so we resist. The more we resist, the more sorrow comes. I'm not saying about resistance to evil or resistance to any adharma. I am saying resistance to situations of life, like COVID situation has come. Now I can't avoid it. It has come now. This whole world is going through COVID. Now what can I do? If I live in a denial mode, or if I live in a mode of, non-acceptance, I will be stuck. I will have agitations and disturbances in the mind. No, lockdown should not have been imposed. So it is imposed. Now it is unlock period. What can we do? We have to figure out what can be done and keep moving. So those who get stuck, they will face sorrow, because the nature of life is movement. And to keep moving, I have to drop. That's why Sarva Dharman Parityajya, the word is Tyajya. So sorrow formula is insistence plus resistance is equal to sorrow. Whenever I feel sorrow, I should ask myself that question. Where am I insisting or where am I resisting? People outside, situations outside, things outside, they are not the main cause of sorrow. We may like to believe that. So we may like to say that my mother-in-law is the cause of my sorrow, my spouse is the cause of my sorrow, my boss is the cause of my sorrow, this government is the cause of my sorrow. And Gurudev used to say that in India we have one special excuse that nobody else has. What is that? Swamiji, that Shani is not in the right position. So right from the planets onwards, to my neighbor, to my spouse, to everybody is the cause of my sorrow except me. So if I am stuck in sorrow anywhere, I have to first ask, where am I insisting? Where am I resisting? Now it is not fair if I leave you with the formula for sorrow. I should tell you the formula for happiness, because that's what we want. What is the formula for happiness? Acceptance plus independence is equal to happiness. When we learn to accept things as they are, and we learn to become independent, these two factors are important for experiencing happiness. Resistance goes by acceptance. Insistence, resistance, they both go by acceptance. When I learn to accept a situation as it is, instead of asking why me, now I ask how do I deal with it. That perspective change has to happen. And this happened, now what to do next? Figure out the objective way to deal with it and keep moving. So when I learn to accept things, and acceptance is not complacency, acceptance is not being dull, acceptance is not being passive. It brings me into active mode very soon. It helps me to overcome my resistance, overcome the psychological barriers, and deal with the situation in the best way possible. That in this situation now COVID is there and we are stuck at home. Now what best can I do? And there are so many positives that have happened because of COVID. Can I focus on those things? Can I see how can I go out and serve people? There are so many more who are going through such difficulties. much more than us. So when a person learns to accept, okay, this is the situation right now, like how people say this is the new normal, or sometimes this is going to be the new normal. Now I learned I have to accept it. So acceptance plus independence. The more I depend on things outside, the more there will be sorrow. So now how do I learn to have acceptance and independence? Surrender is something which helps to do that. Mam ekam sharanam vraja, he says. You surrender unto me. So this, we will come to the details now. The first line is very interesting. Bhagavan says, Sarva dharman parityajya. Abandon all dharma. Generally, Bhagavan should say, abandon adharma. But he is saying here, abandon dharma. What does that mean? It doesn't mean abandon righteousness. Adharma has to be abandoned, dharma has to be upheld. Because the word dharma itself means that which helps us to integrate, unite, makes us, strong, which upholds everything. That is called dharma. And one who follows dharma has a tremendous amount of inner strength. Adharma breaks us. Adharma makes us weak. Adharma makes us a victim of our own senses and our own mind. We may appear to be, enjoying life and, having, what is that called? Living a king size life or live life to the fullest and all that. I'm not saying everybody who lives that way is adharmic, but I'm just saying that it may appear that some people, in spite of doing all adharma, are living that way. But from spiritual standpoint, their personality is disintegrated. They are a victim of their own mind, body, senses, no capability to say no to the mind, body and senses. So adharma breaks us. So we have to ensure we live in dharma because we have a buddhi and we can discriminate. The subtler discriminations of buddhi, what is real, what is unreal, what is temporary, what is permanent, what is good, what is pleasant, what is happiness, what is sorrow, what is means, what is goal. All these are possible to discriminate only when the buddhi is sharp. And what makes the buddhi sharp? Dharma and adharma makes the buddhi sharp. If I stick to my dharma, my duties, my values, my righteousness, then I become strong, buddhi becomes subtle. But here Bhagavan is saying, drop all dharmas also. So we have to understand this in the context that for whom is this shloka given? This shloka is given for a seeker who wants to unite with Bhagavan. First point. At various levels, this shloka can be interpreted. I am taking the highest standpoint first. That somebody who wants to experience oneness with the Lord, somebody who wants to have the knowledge of who am I truly, that person has to go beyond all dharma. So the word dharma here means what? Dharma here means the sharira dharma, mana dharma, buddhi dharma. That I think of myself as this finite, limited individuality because I'm identified with the body, mind and intellect. So I think I am this. But actually I don't know that I am that infinite absolute reality which is enlivening not only this BMI but the whole universe. As long as I don't let go of this small little identification and I don't take the refuge of the one supreme consciousness, I will not realize this oneness. So Mam Ekam, Ekam there means one consciousness. Many people think that Mam Ekam means the word Mam, Bhagavan is saying surrender to Krishna alone. And Krishna alone will give you mukti. Nobody else can give you mukti. So when people read this, they think this is a verse which encourages fanaticism. Because they don't understand the different standpoints in the Bhagavad Gita from where Krishna speaks. So the word Mam does not mean Krishna here. The word Mam means Ishvara, the Lord. You can take any form. It can be Shiva, Durga, Devi, Christ, whatever form. Buddha, whatever, any form. Or even formless. as consciousness. So from devotion standpoint, we say surrender to Ishvara. From knowledge standpoint, we say abide in the consciousness that I am that pure consciousness. I am not the BMI. So do contemplation. Negate who I am not. Assert who am I. So that is the meaning of drop all the dharma. Sarva dharman. Body, mind, intellect. Their dharma is what I am thinking is me. You see, this is the highest principle, that one lets go of the body identification. That's the root cause of my sorrow. Now this highest surrender is what is depicted in the beautiful Leela that Shri Krishna does when he is just 6 years old. And people talk what all about Bhagavan. They are not even knowing. First of all, he is Bhagavan, so there is no problem. He is not an ordinary person. Secondly, he is in the form of a 6-year-old baby. And when the gopis have gone to take bath, he goes and takes away their clothes. And he tells them to come as they are. These gopis also come. Because the whole Leela has nothing to do with lust. It is what Gurudev is to explain, that every single day the gopis would go there to the Yamuna and take bath in the Yamuna. So it is the symbolism that a seeker goes into the puja room every single day. And in the puja room, the seeker is meditating, leaving all the attachments, identification, and trying to surrender to Bhagavan or meditate on consciousness. But once the seeker comes out of the puja room, again the seeker takes up the Dehatma Bhav. Again lives in the world with the psychological notion that I am a Jiva. Functionally, roles one has to play. There is no problem in playing roles functionally. But psychologically, one again feels I am a Jiva. That's why Gurudev is to say, to have half an hour of peaceful meditation, you have to live an alert and vigilant life for 23.5 hours. It is a continuous process. It cannot be that half an hour I am not the Jiva, but 23.5 hours I am the Jiva. That is not possible. But when the seeker lives with alertness daily, through the day, dedicating actions to Bhagavan, remembering that I am not the Karta, Bhagavan alone is the Karta, I am only an instrument, he is the doer, then the person is not encouraging Jiva Bhav. That's how the gopis used to work the whole day. So whole day they will go and fetch some water, or they will, milk the cow, or they will churn the butter, they will put the butter in a pot, hang it on the top, they will serve their family, their husband and all that. Throughout the time their mind is on Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. So through the day they are practicing Karma Yoga. And in the meditation they are thinking about Bhagavan. So what happens? As the seeker does this and the mind becomes more and more and more purified, a day comes when Bhagavan loops away all body identification. That seeker who goes into the meditation, gets into that puja room and is meditating or doing contemplation on the self, loses the Dehatma Bhav, gets into the state of Samadhi, realizes that I am one with Bhagavan, there is no duality, the Bhagavan alone is, and I am that. That is the highest principle, which is what he says, Mam Ekam Sharanam Raja. You surrender to me, that what will he do? Aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami. I will liberate you from all papa. The original sin, what we call, the original sin is the forgetfulness of the true nature and identification with this limited entity. Non-apprehension of the reality leads to misapprehension of the reality that I am a Jiva. That is the original sin or original mistake or original papa. The source of all other papa is that main papa. So when he says, Aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami, I will liberate you from all sins. How will he liberate me from all sins? By making me realize that I am that infinite consciousness. All the sorrows of the dream, They end the moment that dream character wakes up and realizes, oh, oh, I am the waker, the dreamer, the dream world, the dream character, all were illusion. They were not real. So this is the meaning from Jnana standpoint, that let go of all the dharma of the body, mind, intellect. So this is the first thing that we spoke about, that Sharira dharma has to be dropped. I am a jiva, I am tall, I am young, I am handsome, I am thin, I am, North Indian, I am a Canadian, I am a American, whatever. Those are functional roles. That is not me. I am happy, I am sad, I am successful, I am a failure, I am a believer, I am a non-believer. All the adjectives we have added to I am. Nisargadatta Maharaj would say, focus on I am, let go of all the adjectives. That I am is one in everybody. So Ekam means that one consciousness. It is not somewhere out there. Right here in the heart, at this moment also we are feeling Aham. But we have added adjectives to it. I am a Devi group member, I am a Swami, I am a Brahmachari, I am a Sevak, I am a Sevika, I am a seeker, I am a devotee. No doubt these identities help us to evolve, but we have to let go of these identities also in contemplation. Why? Brahman alone is, that's it. Like Gurudev used to give the example, a pole vaulter takes a pole, pitches it in the hole and rises up. Then to cross the bar, the person has to leave the pole. Same way, using the identity, I am a seeker, I am a devotee, one lets go of attachments in all other identities. Then in the state of contemplation, one lets go of that also. What happens then? One has gone into samadhi. So this is the meaning from Jnana standpoint. Let go of Sharira, Mana, Buddhi, Tadatmya. Body identification, let go of it. Then what about the roles that we play? Play all the roles with the attitude, I am a seeker or I am a devotee. And my actions are dedicated to the Lord. So when he says Sarva Dharman Parityajya, there are roles which I have to play, but what is my primary role? When I am not in the seat of contemplation, then how should I live? I should live again as a seeker only. There should not be two identities, that in meditation I am a seeker, but outside meditation I am not a seeker. That split should not happen. No, but then how can we live in the world? I can live in the world with the bhav, I am a seeker. That's an internal attitude. No, Swamiji, we have to live in samsara. We have to have, we have relationships, we have socializing, we have, children, they have school, they have career, they have ambition, so many things are there. There is no problem with any of those. In fact, the role as a mother or a role as a spouse or as a, social member of a community, any other roles I have to play, friend, any roles. I can play all the roles better if I say that I am a seeker. And how will a seeker respond in this situation? If somebody told me something, earlier I would have got upset. Now, as a seeker, I maintain my equanimity. Earlier, it would be difficult for me to let go and forgive. Now, I am able to let go and forgive. So, relationships become more harmonious. Efficiency increases in work. Ability to achieve great things increases. I become more sensitive, understanding. And I, at the same time, become less affected. This whole idea that, I do everything for everybody, but who cares about me? I have to sacrifice all the time. What about me? I need to also, be shown some love, affection. That is natural at some stage in our evolution. There's nothing wrong with that. But as a seeker, one becomes more and more independent. Saying that happiness, the source of happiness and love is in my heart. Why am I depending on anyone outside? I can serve everybody outside with the best of my intentions. And the more one focuses on serving and giving, this whole demand for recognition or, attention or love or appreciation, that just fades away slowly, just goes. Why? Because my sadhana gives me such deep joy my ability to give and love. I enjoy the process of loving itself. So whether the person responds or doesn't respond makes no difference to me. Of course, I value what they respond to me. I don't become indifferent and insult them. But internally, my psychological self-esteem does not depend. I don't seek validation from people. That only if they appreciate me, I feel good about myself. If they appreciate, I'm grateful, very thankful, wonderful, I accept. If they don't appreciate, doesn't matter. Why? Because I enjoy doing it. I enjoyed serving. I enjoyed, let us say, we made a nice dish. I enjoyed the whole process of making it, learning about it, experimenting, making it, and doing it out of love for somebody who is dear to me. That person may not know all the effort which has gone behind. That person may not even appreciate much. Earlier, I would have said, what is the use? There is no appreciation at all. In fact, it is ulta. Forget appreciation. There is no appreciation, but there is only depreciation all the time. One doesn't get affected by it then. One says, Bhagwan, I dedicated it to Bhagwan. I did it to serve the people I love. I enjoyed that process. Oh, yeah. So every role that I play, I become more loving at the same time detached. See, this is the beautiful combination. When Bhagavan says, Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Parityajya means detachment. Sharanam means devotion. Now detachment and devotion come together. Love and detachment come together. The love of the Lord, when we invoke in our heart, that same Bhagavan is in hearts of all. So I'm not loving some, imaginary concept. The Lord, who is infinite reality, who is alone appearing as this whole world, I am serving that Bhagavan. And really speaking, there is only one permanent connection that we have, and that is with Bhagavan. Every other relationship is temporary. It comes, it goes. Best of friends, best of relationships you will see, which are close, they are very, very close. Suddenly they will split. Why? Karma got over. That's it. They'll go their way. Something happens. That whatever happened, that's just an incidental thing. That is not real thing. In the sense that that is just an expression of the karma getting over. That's all. And then they split. If karma brings them together again they will come back sometime. This will keep happening. Coming, going, coming, going. In Bhajagovindam, Shankaracharya said that or not? He said no. Shatrau mitre putre bandhav ma kuru yatnam vigraha sandhav. Whether it's an enemy or friend, Shatrau mitre, putre bandhav, my child or other relationships, don't put efforts to make up and break up. No need. Ma kuru yatnam vigraha sandhav. Why? Because these are temporary. They come, they go. You do whatever is your duty. I'm not saying don't do the duty, but don't have psychological pressure of it. This person is not responding at all, or this person is not loving me. I am doing so much. Or this person is unnecessarily loving me. I don't want this person to love me. Something goes on, make up, break up, we keep doing. How much emotional energy goes in that? Do what needs to be done and then put a line. Think that's all. Beyond this can't be done. That's why I said insistence, resistance has to be given up. Then what should I do? Sarvasmin api pashyatmanam. Look at everybody as one same self. If you can't look at them as the self or appearances of God, look at them as human beings. Like me, they are also human beings. They have their own level of evolution. They will understand great. They also can make mistakes. They also can hurt me like I can make mistakes and I can hurt. So treat others as you like others to treat you. So if you want others to be loving, compassionate, truthful, honest, you be that to them. Sarvasmin api pashyatmanam, sarvat sruja bheda jnanam. Let go of all types of differences. So this is called love and detachment coming together. Sarva dharman parityajya, detachment on one hand. Mam ekam sharanam vraja. Invoke that unconditional love in the heart. And it is there in everybody's heart. It's just that our insistence is making that love condition, that I want only specific way of love. Love expresses in many ways. And we have two insistences that we have to draw. We want love to be expressed in a specific way, and we want it from specific people. These two, if I drop, I am happy. I can love as much as I can. Think about it. Why is it that some people are able to love their pet much more than human beings? Think. One of the reasons will be the pet is able to accept you as you are. And they express their love and happiness. You may go to your home after a hard day's work, you go home. Other people may not even acknowledge that you have come home, but the dog who is there in your house will come running and he'll jump at you, and he'll try to be very excited and all that. So one sees the expression of love, one feels happy. So these two expectations, specific way somebody should express their love to me, and specific people should express their love. That expectation is there in the beginning. But as we grow spiritually, if we leave that expectation, we will see that our life is flooded with love by so many people in so many ways. There's a whole book on this, 5 languages of love. Such a big book it is. Not big meaning, this much it is. You can read that book, that people have languages of love. Somebody's language of love is they need gifts. So if you go somewhere, you bring anything for them, they feel very happy. Oh, you thought about me. Somebody's language of love is that they want appreciation. You don't need to give anything to them. Just tell them I love you, or tell them how good you are. Tell them that I appreciate what you did. This is so wonderful. So they want words. Just give them the words. What is the problem? Why are you being so confused? Genuinely give. Don't do fake. Then that is evident. Then that is hurting more. So somebody wants gift. Somebody wants love, appreciation through love. Love through appreciation. Somebody wants time. You must spend time with them. You may not do anything great. What they call, they will talk sweet nothings. But you spend time talking, thus connect. What happened in her life, what happened in your life, connect, talk, spend time. Some people's language of love is you must do things with them. So, work together on some work, some project or some hobby or some skill, anything, work together. So different languages of love people have. One has to understand what language of love it is and try and fulfill that. Same way, we may also have certain expectations, and each of us may have from different people, different languages of love. But that is where it is the seeker tries to rise above all that and starts accepting. So if I love specific person and I want love only from that person, I am so fixated that I am not able to see other people are loving me. How the Supreme Lord loves us through every single thing that is happening around us. The sunrise is an expression of Bhagwan's love. The birds chirping is an expression of Bhagwan's love. The oceans, the waves are rising, expression of Bhagwan's love. Air we are breathing is expression of His love. When we start seeing that the Lord is expressing His love through so many ways for us, our life doesn't remain anymore in a demand, nobody loves me, nobody cares for me. That is a myth. Because we want specific people to love in specific ways. So when he says Sarva Dharman Parityajya, drop all these expectations in the roles and learn to give and serve. And don't ask that question that what will I get in return. The whole objective of giving and loving and enjoying that very process is that this question will dissolve. No, Swamiji, but people will take us for granted if we do that. Don't worry, they cannot take you for granted. People take us for granted because we have taken ourselves for granted. Nobody can take us for granted. Unless we have taken ourselves for granted and we have a low opinion of ourselves and we are not smart enough and we are stuck in some attachment. Such smart people. Vidurji was such a smart person. Nobody can take him for granted. He's a sattvic person, very smart person. Krishna Bhagwan, nobody can take him for granted. Chanakya, nobody can take him for granted. They are very sattvic people, but very, very smart because they are detached. There is no attachment they have. They follow righteousness, so no problem. So this is the second meaning, that in the roles we play, we should be a seeker or a devotee in every single role. That's what is the first shloka of the Gita. Dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha. The first line of the first shloka is that. In that, the first quarter, if you take Dharma kshetre kurukshetre, what does that mean? If you reverse that, if you split that, you will get kshetre kshetre dharmam kuru. In every role of life, live in a dharmic way, live doing your duties. Then why Bhagavan said drop all the dharmas? He said drop all those types of dharmas at the body, mind, intellect level, which pull us down. All our, specific people should love me, specific way they must love me. All those demands that we have, no, that I should drop. And live as a devotee, that I am here to serve Bhagavan. Mam ekam sharanam braja. Who is that eka? Is the Lord. Then when we apply this in specific devotional practices, coming to bhakti as a sadhana, then sarva dharman parityajya means what? All the pride and desires in the devotional practices that we have. I am a devotee, Swamiji, every day I do 10 malas of japa. That is called abhiman as a bhakta. So bhakta dharma, sadhak dharma, one holds on to for all the other dharmas, to detach from all the other dharmas, attachments, I mean. Then the sadhak abhiman also has to go, because this devotee and God difference is because of our identification. There is no difference actually. If I let go of that sadhak abhiman or bhakta abhiman, how will I let go? Bhagwan, you alone are. I dedicate all this to you alone. This sadhana is happening by your grace. I am able to do this japa also by your grace. And I love you, and so I am doing this dedicated to you. There is no bhav of abhiman after that. I did so much of japa, I am such a punyavan, I am a purified mind. All these people, where sadhana they do, they are not even bhaktas, they are not even sadhaks. All that has to just go. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, when he was doing the worship of Mother Kali, at one point he felt that he is a devotee and Mother Kali is the Ishta, is the form of the Lord. And he is worshipping. At one point he came where he lost the sense of identification with his being a priest. Suddenly he realized there is no difference at all. This division between Bhakta and Bhagavan is not there. It is there as long as I have Bhakta Bhav. If Bhakta Bhav is gone, Bhagavan Bhav also gone. Then what is remaining? One non-dual self remains. So he started putting flowers on himself. People thought he's a mad person. People thought it's blasphemy. He's thinking he is God. That's not blasphemy. Blasphemy is the other side. To think that I am separate from Bhagavan, that is actually blasphemy, because how can you be separate from infinity? Infinity includes everything. Now you are trying to challenge infinity by saying that I am different, I am ego, I am separate from God. That is actually blasphemy. So many Mahatmas have experienced this or not. When they are worshipping Bhagavan, suddenly that division will just go. Why? Because they become so one with the Lord. They forget there is no division actually. Again, this is beautifully symbolized by the Leela where Bhagavan takes Vaman avatar. In Vaman avatar, Bhagavan asks Bali to give land covered by 3 steps. And Bali Raja gives that promise. So when Bhagavan grows in size, and he covers the earth with one foot, covers the higher worlds with the other one. Then he says, where will I keep my third step? And Bali bows down. He says, you please place on my head. When Bali surrenders in that way, Bhagwan's foot comes onto his head. That is such a beautiful analogy there. See, devotee struggles to hold on to the feet of Bhagwan. But in Bali Raja's case, Bhagwan's foot is on the head of the devotee. Devotee doesn't have to struggle to hold on. Bhagwan's foot is automatically there. It will always be there. So Bali Raja is pushed into the Rasatala. Not Rasatala, I think Sutalalok. Sutalalok he is pushed into. And people say Bali Raja surrendered, but you know what a punishment he got. Actually, he didn't get punishment. When Bali Raja gave up his Jiva Bhav, Bhagwan gave up Ishwar Bhav. We learn in Mahavakya, no? Tattvamasi, when we say the Tvam Pada, we drop. Tat Pada also drop. Jiva Bhav gone, Ishwar Bhav gone. What remains? Consciousness alone remains. So Bali Raja got the highest realization. And as a role, he was playing the role of a king in Sutalalok, and Bhagwan became his doorman or watchman. In Bhagavad, this whole thing comes. Beautiful it is. Bali Raja didn't suffer at all. In fact, Bhagwan became his Dwarpal, his doorkeeper. Bhagwan gave him that exalted status of a master. And he becomes the doorkeeper of Bali Raja. And internally, he and Bali have realized oneness. So a Jiva, when the Jiva drops the Jiva Bhav, Jiva realizes oneness with Bhagwan. So Sarva Dharman Parityajya, Mam Ekam, worshipping that one form of the Lord, drop all the other forms, focus on one. Then that form also will go. Then what happens? Oneness with the Supreme. And lastly, when he says Dharma, so the movement in life is from Adharma, Paradharma to Swadharma, from Swadharma to Swarupa Dharma. So I have to abandon all these, Paradharma, Adharma, Swartha Dharma, abandon all these. Sarva Dharman Parityajya means first level, abandon doing adharma, doing wrong things, doing unrighteous things. Second, drop paradharma, doing things which I am not meant for, which is not according to my temperament. Now and then something we may have to do, that's a different thing. But people take careers and they make big choices based on paradharma. Bhagwan says, don't do that. Like Arjun wanted to run away to the forest. Bhagwan says, don't go. That is paradharma. And he says, paradharma bhayavaha. It will create a lot of agitation for you. So many people, they have chosen their careers because of what? Peer pressure, family pressure, financial pressure, social pressure. Not because what they really, their heart resonates with that. And many of them land up in paradharma. Then they suffocate there. They go through stress, worry, tension. Gita says drop adharma, drop paradharma. And even if you identify what you are really made for, that is called swadharma. In that swadharma, drop swartha. That I do it only for my glory, my name, my fame, my achievement, my success, my appreciation. At some stage that is there, but rise above it. How will you rise above it? Mam ekam sharanam vraja. Holding on to the ideal. Whether it is making a difference to some people's lives or, dedicating oneself to a particular profession to achieve great things in that profession and lift that profession to heights which will influence many more people's lives for the better. Or it is a social cause of, let us say, helping the poor or, fighting against some medical issues or, bringing education to the masses. It could be any of these. Where I lose myself, that is the Karma Yoga part which you have learned in 3rd chapter of the Gita. Where I forget who am I dedicate myself completely to the cause. The cause is greater than I. Like many of you are serving even in the mission where you take up to organize some festivals or programs or volunteer for certain activities. The attitude is that we are here to serve the society. And we are here to sync our differences, work together for a common cause, which is bringing maximum happiness to maximum people for the maximum time. And all this I am doing how? With my dedication to the cause or my dedication to Ishvara. Ishvara is the highest. Saying, Bhagwan, I do all this for you. Because you put me here in this role, I am doing it for you. So these are three standpoints which we saw. Sharira dharma you give up, that is jnana standpoint. Sadhak abhiman you give up, bhakta abhiman give up, that is the bhakti standpoint. And in the roles that we play, give up adharma, paradharma, swartha dharma, and play all the role as a devotee, dedicating everything to Bhagavan, and ultimately drop that identity of devotee also. So this is what is the meaning of this shloka, sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. So the word dharma has different meanings in different levels, and the word eka also has different meanings at different levels, and what should be given up, that also has different meanings. What will happen with this at whichever level I am operating, and I can operate at different levels at different points in the day also. That is up to me. Aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami. He says, I liberate you from all agitations, attachments, insistence, resistance, sins, and ultimately ignorance. So don't grieve. So this is one meaning of this. I mean, this is the gist of that shloka. Now, when we see Arjun's life, it's beautifully how Arjun surrenders. When Bhagavan says, Mam ekam sharanam vraja, the surrender of Arjun is most beautiful. First and foremost is he chose Bhagavan and not the Narayani Sena. That is called Ananya Varanam. His Pandavas had 8 Akshauhini Sena, Kauravas had 10. So from management perspective, Pandavas should have chosen that one Akshauhini Sena to increase their strength. And on one hand is Akshauhini Sena, and on the other hand is Krishna Bhagavan, who will not lift weapons. Any person who is a trained management leader would say that I choose the army. But Arjun says, no, I will choose Bhagavan. Bhagavan is an unproductive resource as though. But he is a very smart strategist. And Arjun chose Bhagavan out of devotion. And is it not true that Bhagavan, because he was on the side of the Pandavas, Pandavas really won? Because so many smart strategies. He not only chose Bhagavan, he made Bhagavan the charioteer. Buddhim tu sarathim vidhi. Who is our charioteer? First of all, are we choosing Bhagavan every single moment or not? We have a choice between choosing Bhagavan and Maya. Do we get carried away by Maya of Bhagavan, which is his Sena? Or do we say, I do all this for Bhagavan? Then I am choosing Bhagavan. And when I say I do all this for Bhagavan, Bhagavan becomes my charioteer. My buddhi has that bhav of devotion. Then when he is deluded, he comes down from the chariot, faces the Kauravas, and is turning towards Bhagavan. He turns his back towards the Kauravas and he turns towards Bhagavan. That is a seeker steadily contemplating, meditating in the seat of one's own sadhana. Leaving the whole world aside, I sit and meditate only on the Lord or on consciousness. Ultimately, he accepts his ignorance, delusion as a student, surrenders to the Lord and seeks guidance. And ultimately he says, Oh Lord, I am ready to follow your instructions. You please tell me what should be done. So the whole Gita Bhagavan gives. And final message of the Gita that Bhagavan told Arjuna is, Mam ekam sharanam vraja. Surrender to me alone. Why did Bhagavan say that again? Because Arjun's surrender there was incomplete. Let us say it was 80% surrender. Why is it 80%? Because he said, Shishyasteham shadhimam tvam prapannam. I surrender to you, O Lord, but I will not fight. That is called conditional surrender. You tell me to do anything, but I will not fight. He threw away the bow and arrow. Then Bhagwan said, okay, this 20% needs to be filled. So to make Arjun surrender 100%, 18 chapters Bhagwan gave. You just see his compassion. At the end, with this shloka, Bhagwan's Upadesh concludes. And Arjun's surrender also becomes complete. Why? Because Bhagwan, when he has done all this, by then Arjun has understood many factors. And Bhagwan tells Arjun, Yatha ichhasi tatha kuru. He doesn't tell Arjun, you have to fight. He has told many things in the Gita. At the end, the decision is left to Arjun. And he says, Arjun, you do what you feel like. Yatha ichhasi tatha kuru. And what does Arjun say? Karishye vachanam tava. Bhagwan, I will do what you have told me. He picks up his bow and arrow, fights and wins the war. So this is the beautiful way surrender becomes complete. So that's where I stop here for today. Anything anybody wants to ask, share, you are welcome. You can unmute and then say or ask anything.
May I say something, please?
Haji.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was very enlightening. It was, I connected to it very well. You know, looking at certain things which have happened in my life and as it happens in everybody's life. And there have been moments when I was pretty broken and, you know, your start is like your very first sentence was, is insistence and persistence. And I connected to that beautifully because, you know, I stood firm on my dharma and I insisted and I persisted that that's how it should continue. It's only when it was completely broken down that it came to me that what you said is what you just described at the Dharma Kshetra, at the war field, that when you surrender, then only you get the guidance from the Lord, from that inside yourself or from the universe. I really connected to that. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Nice to know. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Swamiji. I was also saying the same thing. As a true lover of the Gita, I found this the most fantastic talk I've heard. At the end of Gita, capturing the essence of the Gita and getting to message and meaning has really been wonderful. Any other questions? Let's take advantage of Swamiji's presence and ask all our questions and doubts from anyone.
If it is in any of the texts that you are studying, that is also okay. It need not be only on the talk here.
Yes. Any other question?
Sunita ji and Kanchan ji have unmuted. Yes, please ask.
Swamiji, I just wanted to ask. Okay, Neelam here. Swamiji, I just wanted to know this insistence and persistence is the way I want things to be done, or I want a particular person to be like this. Does it mean that also?
Means that also. It is not persistence, please. It is actually resistance. Insistence and resistance.
Resistance and?
Insistence and resistance.
Insistence and resistance. Okay.
So we may want certain things to be in certain way, certain people to be in certain way. There's nothing wrong with expectation, but acceptance has to be there because they may not be like that.
Yeah, correct.
Suppose I feel that, you know, somebody like in the war, Mahabharat war, now Bhagwan himself went as a Shanti Doot to make peace with them. Bhagwan could not convince them. Now if Bhagwan would have thought that, oh God, I am Bhagwan and they didn't listen to me only, he would have become miserable. But he dropped his insistence, saying, okay, that's their choice. Now then they have to face the consequence. Then the war happened and they got destroyed. Now what can I do? So
Bhagwan does not insist, who are we?
Exactly. So Bhagwan only doesn't insist, then how can we insist? Because freedom is given, na? Swatantrata is there of choice, Purusharth.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Swamiji, I wanted to share something.
Haji.
In my family, whenever there's a death in the family, For 13 days, we chant the Gita. After every chapter, we repeat this verse.
Yes,
So
yes.
I've been hearing this verse as a child. They used to say it in Hindi. Taj dharma sare ek meri hi sharan ko prapt ho. मैं मुक्त पापों से करूंगा तू न चिंता व्याप्त हो. But all these years, Swami Ji, I'm in my 60s now. I did not understand why Lord Krishna wanted us to give up our dharma. And nobody in my family could explain it to me. But thank you so much. Today I finally understood what Lord Krishna was saying. Thank you so much, Swami Ji.
Wonderful.
Koti koti pranam.
Yes.
Swamiji, in
Yes.
Gita, we have seen that a lot of things are just indicative. Like as Kanchan said, like anybody would have thought of this, why give up your dharma? Dharma means that, to do your swadharma, whatever. And so it can really create a lot of misconceptions in people. And I think only after doing this text that we are this much, we get a bit more of sense of reality as to what they are trying to say. Is this all alankrit or is it all poetry form? It's all indicative. I mean, for a normal person, it would be very difficult to grasp this.
No, I agree. It is subtle, it is challenging, no doubt. But the topic also is like that. And the thing is that it is not only poetry. There is philosophy indicated because it's the summary of the entire Gita. So if somebody has actually read the Gita, then it is supposed to be studied in sequence, you see.
Yes.
Will we do this with any other science? Think about that. Will you open a quantum physics book and suddenly open a page and read that page? That we will not do, because if you do that, they complete chaos. But if you have read all the pages before, forget science, forget any fictional novel also, you take some book and open. I don't know what.
It's such a profound thing. I think that's why probably it's at the end, the last chapter.
It's at the end of it's in the 18th
it's
chapter.
so profound. Yes, my goodness. I mean, I think while Swamiji was speaking, we could all relate to some kind of an incident in our lives and how foolish we have been. Of the way we have handled it. And hopefully we are getting there to become slightly better.
The fact that you are listening to Gita and studying Vedanta for so many years means there's a lot of punya karma that you are on the path. So definitely we'll get there.
Yes. Swamiji, one more question.
Yes.
Swamiji, one more question. How does one become assertively good? You said you should be sattvic and your goodness should be assertive. Your people should not take you for granted. So just a little guidance on that, because we tend to be good, but we are not assertive enough to assert that goodness. We just lie low and take the easy way out. So a little bit on that, Swamiji, if you can tell us.
First thing is, to be assertively good, I should be non-personal, number one. Because if I take everything personally, I will get very affected and I cannot be objective. So I have to be non-personal, which means that the issue for which I have to be assertive, that issue is more important to me than my image and my ego and how people are treating me. Because the moment the attention shifts on I, my assertiveness can become aggressiveness or it can become dullness. That in-between thing doesn't come. This is the in-between thing, and that will come when I become very assertive. I am insisting on this, or this should happen in this way because these are the reasons, these are the important factors, this has to happen, this is how it will affect us. So my focus then is not on how you are not taking my advice and why you should not follow me and I have done so much for you. Then the issue remains unaddressed. It has become a personal clash. So first is to be assertively good. I must be able to assert what is that for which I am asserting. That is more important than I. Number two, I should also be smart enough to identify which are the possibilities in the minds of the other person, where the other person may take it for granted or may not be wanting to follow certain advice or certain thing that I am saying about. There could be certain objections in their mind. There could be certain doubts in their mind. I should be smart enough to preempt those and prepare myself for it, so that I am able to convince the opposite person that this is why this has to happen. And once that person gets convinced, then if there is some personal bitterness, then the third part comes is that if there is some personal ill will, then I should be able to put that, say, you know, the settlement saying that, see, on an individual level, we may have our differences, but this issue is very important. Like in Samudra Manthan, for the sake of getting Amrit, the Devtas and Asuras came together because Amrit is important.
Yeah. Right.
You see, so that way then put aside the prejudices and the attachments inside. And fourth very important thing in being assertive is, I should be confident. My sense of confidence comes from my inner strength, from my sadhana. If I am weak, if I am not confident of myself, that is how I feel that people will take me for granted. It's not really people can take me for granted. It's just that I have become weak. I have not done my sadhana, or I have not made myself strong. It's just like this health situation. Bacteria is there all around us, but as long as our immunity is strong and it is fighting, we will not fall sick. Same way in assertiveness, the strength comes from within. And that if a person is confident and has done sadhana and has made oneself strong, no problem.
Yeah. And as you said, Krishna's is the best example. You know, no one could get the better of him.
Yeah.
He was assertively good. Krishna. Yeah.
And last point, if I have to add, we should have faith in the power of goodness. You see, people may not respond the way we want. People may not accept the way we want them to be or how we are. They may still do certain things which are not acceptable to us, or they may not believe in the power of goodness. But I should believe in the power of goodness.
Yes. 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 That gives the strength. That will give us the strength. Yeah. Thank you, Swamiji. Any other questions?
Yes, Swamiji, you're talking about the confidence that comes from to be assertively good, to be confident. Would that also come from a lack of dependence?
Yes.
Because you're no longer depending on someone else's opinion or someone's judgment of your act or what you're saying. Would that also require a certain degree of happiness?
Definitely.
Internal independence.
Yes, internal independence is actually the main source of confidence.
And Hariom Swamiji, we are just overwhelmed by the beautiful talk you've given. I mean, even though we're studying this from so many years, but this has taken us to another level. Thank you so much. Swamiji, about the charts that you had said.
Swamiji. Okay.
Tarana,
continue.
Yeah,
continue.
So the four aspects of how we give up dharma. The first one you said Sharir dharma, when you give up Sharir dharma, Mana dharma, and Buddhi dharma. Wouldn't that be at the highest level? Because that is, so if we have to take this in a sequential form, the way we are living, so as a bhakt and as a karma yogi, we can change things in the roles we play and our practices sadhana, and of course in our duties. So finally it would come to the level of giving up jiva bhav.
Yes, that happens last, because jiva bhav has to become thin.
Yeah.
The earlier
it's
level,
the most difficult.
do that.
Yeah, and the vasana pressure reduces, etc. Thank you, Swamiji. Hari
Om Purnamada Idam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om.